Here we are. Tortoise season has started. I'm Kathy Udiger. I'm your chairperson. And wow, how great to see all of us. I bet you know who this is, don't you? This is my Tad yesterday, eating a beautiful globe mallow. So I want to just look over the agenda so you'll know what we're going to do. I'm going to go through some announcements and stuff that we're doing in Tortoise Group, look at the upcoming events. We have a time to answer all of your questions and tell some stories or whatever's going on that you're interested in. Then I'm going to do a little thing about early spring behavior, what to look for with your tortoise, what they should be doing now, and a few other things, little care things. Then we'll have refreshments provided by Susan Stater. And then we're going to have a very special talk from Renee Hussey, who's here from Creature Comforts Animal Hospital. So, lots coming up, folks. And I'm just going to show you, first off, I know you're probably still thinking about the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center closure, and that's still coming up at the end of 2014. But what I'd like for you to remember and to carry to people who ask you about tortoises and what to do with their tortoise that they don't want anymore, there is no place currently to take an unwanted tortoise. That may change, and we may have an outlet at the Animal Foundation, but currently that's not the case. So what we ask people to do is to try to find somebody who'll take the tortoise, and then ask them to contact us so that we can help them create a habitat, and learn a little bit about care. So please carry that message to people if you can. Back to Mega Diet. So, juicy, so that there's plenty of water for all that fiber. Make a little ridge out of it so they can go chomp, 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 chomp. Of course, what mine does is then he waits. And then I fix it back up and a nice another ridge. He's not spoiled though, But that way he doesn't get it squished into his nostrils and clogged up in there. So we have, I believe it's now 16, soon to be 18 people who sell Mega Diet around the valley, and you can buy it online. And when you do, it's Susan back here who fulfills your orders for you. So lots of places to get it. I want to look at the upcoming events. We have a lot coming up. Our next meeting will be May 17th. Marcy Henson from the county will be talking about the desert tortoise situation. She's been the head of the county multiple species habitat, a comprehensive planning plan or something, for a long time. And this has to do with how the tortoise has been handled within the county, where the money goes, and county funding of programs. And she has a fabulous overview of what's going on in the county with various species. So I think you'll find this very interesting. Tomorrow we're going to have a Mega Diet bagging. The 10-pound sack has been so popular that we sold a half ton over the winter. And so we've gotten another half ton to bag tomorrow, which is kind of a quickie. Won't take us too long to do that. If there are a couple of people who are interested in doing that, we'd enjoy having you join us. Where did those little slips go? So if anybody's interested in joining us, it's going to be from 1 to 2 at Sherry's house, which is Russell and Pecos. So it's right here. I know, Bob, you're coming, aren't you? Thank you. So there are a couple of slips to tell you how to get to Sherry's house. There's the annual spring plant sale at the Springs Preserve. And you'll notice it's 2 days instead of 1. It's Saturday and Sunday at the end of March. And they always have a good selection of real live tortoise plants. They'll have globe mallow and some of the primroses and maybe some of the things you can't find other places. Maybe a little bit more expensive than some spots, but there they are. So you might want to go there. And you don't have to pay to go to the plant sale. Has anyone been there? So how do you get in? Do you go around the back somehow, Diane?
You drive up this way, and they usher you in. They have a lot of ushers, and they'll show you
good.
where to park, but you do it over to the right side.
Okay, so they'll show you how to get there. Good.
They'll carry it out and load it in your car, too.
Oh, good. They'll help you load the plants. So when you decide to get 2 and it turns out to be, 18, and instead of the 1-gallon plants, you get the 5-gallon plants, Now we have a couple of field trips coming up in April, and because we've had such tremendous response to our trips, we've decided to limit it to paid members. So that means if you are a paid member in 2014, we welcome you to sign up for these trips. Jim, would you like to try hitting that and see what happens? Oh. That's not going to work. Let's go to the website and show people how to find it there. Thank you. So if you look under events on the left side, sorry, this is my old laptop. Then you always have to scroll down a little once it eventually gets up there. We now have Wi-Fi at the library, so we can do these things. So a little bit farther down, see there are the 2 field trips. Now the first one is to the home of Norm Schilling, and he was he was here last year in May. Remember, you probably know Norm Schilling. He's a well-known horticulturalist. He has a show on KNPR, and he's been a friend of Tortoise Group forever. And when he was here, he offered to have us come to his home this year. So we're taking him up on it. And he has a fabulous, fabulous garden home with all kinds of plants that he's willing to tell us all about. So, in order to sign up for that one, Jim, if you'd scroll down to kind of so that it highlights that link do you see where info is at the bottom there? Wait a sec, over here. Right there. See, now if you sign up for that, just send it to me and I will get it. Tell me how many people are coming. Be sure you've paid your membership. And if you don't know, oh, that's the other one. Sorry. Right, that's the one for Norm on April 12th. The one on April 19th is to the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center. This is the last opportunity you'll have to go there. So they'll be closing, and this is it. So if you're interested in going, and if you haven't been before, I encourage you to come and see the interesting way that tortoises are held currently. Okay. Now, thank you. As you see, we have some plants over here. I encourage you to pick up during the break either these, there are a couple of cactus plants here. Oh, we're going to go right back to the website in a sec. Oh, well, maybe not. Sorry, I wish I were more organized here. I'm going to go, oh no, wrong way. Okay, sorry. We have seeds and that are Cactus Joe's mix that we've had for a couple of years. We have lots of those, so if you're interested in planting some of those for your tortoises or tortoise, take a couple. We have plenty. And I have some dandelion seeds there. They're about 70, and these are ones I've collected since the last meeting. And so they're just plain old dandelion seeds from my yard. And I'm going to show you in a little bit where the sheet is with instructions on how to plant these things. Now I'd like to introduce Janina Little. Where are you? There you are. She's our adoption coordinator, and she has some announcements.
Yeah, I sure do. Hi, I'm Janina. I've met quite a few of you, but I haven't met all of you. Okay.
I'm going to put this here and stand right here with you.
Okay, that sounds great. So I am
Gathered.
adoptions coordinator for Tortoise Group, and we're going to have a busy season, I think. And we need help getting tortoises into backyards. And we all know tortoises need a good burrow, and it's a little bit of a project. And we want to do a few trainings to either help you so you know how to build a burrow in your own backyard, or to help other adoption folk who just need a little bit extra help. So we're looking for a couple trainings, probably on a weekend, but I have a little sign-up sheet, and you let me know your name, phone number, and maybe if you're a weekday person or a weekend person, we can create a couple. And it'll take a few hours, about 3 hours when we have 4 or 5 people, or we could have more, we could have 15 people, either way. And make it a really fun tortoise group event and help either adopt tortoises or make a good home for tortoises. So, and it's a little bit of work. We'll be cutting some wood, using some drills. It's really fun.
And shoveling.
And shoveling, yes. We'll take breaks, we'll have cold water, and we'll have lots of shovels, so everyone can bring their own shovel. And just come see me to sign up.
At the break?
That would be great. At the break.
Okay. Thanks, Janina. Well, we've all been brumating, haven't we? The tortoises have been brumating, but we at Tortoise Group have been busy. And if you read the newsletter, you know that the Vision Committee was very busy in creating a strategic plan. And I'm going to do some thank yous to let you know how many wonderful people have been involved lately. So our Vision Committee consisted of our consultant, Lisa Mayo DeRiso, and Tina Bates, who is over there. Raise your hand. Larry Asadillo, where are you, Larry? George Stecklin, whose wife is here, Suzanne, Annette Magnus, Laura Deitch, and me. And part of that strategic plan, which has all kinds of fabulous plans for Tortoise Group, you won't believe it, was to get an executive director. So we started on that in November, and we went through not as long a process as you might, and ta-da! Here is our Jim Cornell, who arrived 1 week ago, and he's right there. And you will not believe what a fabulous man that this is. We had no idea when we hired him that he was as incredible as he is. And every few days he'll tell me some other amazing skill that he has and fabulous ideas. So just hang on. We've just got terrific plans coming up. And we painted his office. Oh, first, the office is, I've sent out emails, I know, but let me tell you too. Kathy Gillespie, who manages A&B Printing, donated a space in her building. Now that's on South Highland between Sahara and Spring Mountain. You can get a tattoo nearby, you can go to the Gentlemen's Club, and other exciting entertainment nearby. So Jim has a lot of, options when he's there at the office. They've just been so wonderful to us, and they've opened it up. They say people can just come in, come right up. Jim's going to be selling Mega Diet there, and if you need something, he'll be available there. And our painting crew was headed by Marv Stevens, who's hiding right there behind Jim, and Debbie Forbush, who's not here, Diane McLean, who's back here at the sales table, Bob Sturgeon, Rick Brettain, and Sue Leo. Sue, did you come today? No. So I want to thank all these people for getting us this far. We're going to have lots more coming up, and we will invite you to join us on our journey as we go along. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jim to say a few words to you. Jim Cornell. Oh.
First problem is I'm left-handed. All right, there we go. I know Janina was mentioning about shoveling, and we just moved from Canada, so shoveling is certainly one thing that I really don't want to be involved in right now, but I will certainly try and do my best to help out with that and all of the other things that we're going to be doing at the Tortoise Group. It's great to be here. It's great to see so many faces. My previous life to this one was running an aquarium in Canada, a very small aquarium, so small aquarium, small community, so the number of people that would come out to meetings you could count on one hand sometimes, especially in the winter time, so it's nice to see lots of faces. Everybody's been really welcoming. Kathy's been great. It's just been a whirlwind week for the first week, but already starting to come to terms with some of the things that we're going to be doing. There's a lot in the strategic plan, so a few years from now, hopefully there's a footprint somewhere around Las Vegas. We're working on all kinds of different adoption things, and because my background before the aquarium is mostly in communications as a newspaper and a magazine editor and also a writer, a photographer. One of the first things is going to be getting some videos on the website, starting to work on new communications plans. So lots of different things, which is great because it's not just one thing. There's going to be lots of different things to tackle as we move forward under Kathy's guidance as well. So it's really a team effort. It's not just me at the helm, I guess. It's everybody pitching in, everybody helping, everybody working together to bring this to wherever it can go. I guess the sky's the limit for Tortoise Group, and we're just hoping for lots more people helping, lots more people getting involved and pushing us towards that goal, wherever it may be in the future. If anybody does have any questions, and feel free to ask either now or at the break, and also to come and visit me in the new office when I'm not getting a tattoo done. And it's an interesting area, but it's and the other way that you can find it is, I think, the only car with Canadian license plates in the entire state right now. So you can find me that way as well. Hand it back to Kathy and keep the thing going here. Oh, I guess you're going to need that.
Wait, hold that while I rehook up here.
I do play in a band as well, but I'm not going to sing all the hand over here.
Tell him some more of the things you do.
Well, other
He's a
than
drummer, he's a botanist, he's a...
my first degree is in botany. I also have a background in computer science and in education as well. And my other life is soccer refereeing. I'm a level 1 soccer referee and also run soccer referee courses, assessing other referees and just running around generally getting abused by members of the public, children, adults, coaches. It's a fun thing to do for not much money.
So a lot of enthusiasm coming here for soccer. Thank you, Jim, very much. Well, you're all going to enjoy getting to know him. We sit in the office and we say, now today we're going to work on this and this and this, and then we get waylaid by all the amazing things that there are to talk about. Would you punch up the... questions and stories. Let me go to that next. Sorry. Good thing I looked at the agenda, huh? Does anyone have questions about tortoises now? I'm going to talk a little bit about behavior, but if you have some questions, or do you have some comments about what's going on? Yeah, John.
I have just kind of a general question for Jim. If you looked at the map when he was coming from Canada to Las Vegas, because we're a little closer to the equator here, I don't know.
Yeah, it's nice. They're just having another storm where we just came from, so it's nice to be able to look at it from afar and not have to worry about it.
Okay.
When we were emailing back and forth, Jim said, we had 38 inches of snow last week. That was 1 week. And he was trying to get ready to come, but he couldn't sell his snowblower yet because it kept just get another foot of snow and another foot of snow. It was really something. Don't even ask him how long it took to get here, which was almost a week. Yes, Debbie.
We built a really great tortoise habitat. You came out and inspected it. I don't know if you remember, but you came out and inspected it and thought it was wonderful and all that kind of stuff, and our tortoise disappeared under the rosemary and built her own.
The nerve.
Has never used it, and she's doing just fine, so.
One of the things about being under the rosemary, though, is that it gets water. So it's damp under there. So I'd have a heart-to-heart talk with her and try to get her out of there. Maybe fill it up somehow. And let's see, what could we do to enhance the burrow? Has anyone else had success with this? That happens sometimes. When you see them digging, you know, it's a good idea to try to stop them then. In the fall, they do that. They dig, 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 you know.
Well, she didn't dig that much. I mean, she just kind of basically went under the mulch, dug a little bit, and that's where she spent the winter.
So she's not very
Way
far
in the
under.
back. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And now she's not even under. Now she's not even in the, she's just under the rosemary.
So what happens if you shove her in the burrow?
She goes in, turns around, and walks out.
Bad girl.
So we're not really.
It's a real problem. Then she's not the only, Sunny isn't here, is she? Sunny has this beautiful new burrow, and her tortoise won't stay in it either, and wasn't there this winter. So I'm not sure what to do. We know the burrow has enough insulation. Yes, Audrey.
Is there a way to only feed her in the burrow?
Well, you wouldn't want to put food in the burrow.
I can't say you could bring it out. Or just in the entrance to entice her?
Well, we did.
Well, so Audrey said, is there a way to put food like near the front of the burrow, I guess you're
We put the water
thinking?
there and everything. And
That wouldn't do it. They're very space-oriented. They can go wherever things are. I think you're going to have to use your ingenuity. And won't we be interested to hear how she solves this problem?
pull out the rosemary.
Well, I would try maybe you could put some kind of hard stuff around, maybe some pavers around your rosemary and make it hard for her to get in there.
So I was wondering though, we did above ground burrow, and what she was actually in when we found her, because in our backyard there was already a tortoise burrow for babies. So she was going into that. Okay.
Here you are, right here.
Okay, when we moved into our house, there was already a baby tortoise burrow area, and she found us, and that's where she was staying, mostly during the summer and we wanted to give her a much, better burrow. So I was wondering if some tortoises may just like beneath the ground rather than above the ground, because we built an above the ground.
I think they probably do. That's the way they normally do it. They either dig into the side of a wash or they dig into the ground. So that would be their preference, and it goes down at about a 15 to 18 degree angle. So I think they would prefer it. But from the point of view of safety and your own sanity, that's the reason we've been suggesting the above ground burrow, because you can build it so it won't flood and you can always see your tortoise. Because that worry all the time is just terrible. Is my tortoise trapped or stuck or gone
It doesn't help if they don't use it.
It doesn't. So I would try blocking it off and putting something really hard around there. Maybe you can, or even maybe fencing it. What else? What else could we do? Come on, all you tortoise guys. Yeah, Janina, what do you think?
Put the scat in the burrow to make it smell.
Oh, good idea. Take some of her scats, poops, and put them in the burrow.
Oh.
Yeah, good idea. That's a real good idea when you're transferring a tortoise, to get them to feel at home because they poop in their burrows, Yes, Nancy.
I'm designing my own burrow. Stuff to me.
Nancy's designing her own burrow. Why is that, Nancy?
I'm sorry?
Why is that you're designing your own?
That's a weird person.
My
Uh-huh.
question is, how high are the bricks, blocks that you, what's the maximum size?
They're 7.5 inches high.
Oh,
They're 8 by 8 by 16, but they aren't really. Just like a 2 by 4 isn't either. Well, there's room for the grout so that it ends up being that. When you,
You don't have to explain.
okay, 7.5.
Okay.
Mhm. Anything else?
Do they ever grow larger than that?
The blocks grow? I'm sorry, I just couldn't help it.
I deserve it. Tortoises ever grow?
Oh, taller? Yes, they do. It isn't that their shell probably is taller, but they certainly walk taller than that. And so what we've been doing, for instance, my tortoise walks about, see, you got me doing it too. My tortoise walks about 9 inches tall. I guess he stands up on tippy toes. Some are about 6, 6.5 adults. So what we've been doing is we've been buying a sheet of styrofoam. That styrofoam that you used for houses, 4 by 8 sheet, it comes in inch, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So you can just plop a sheet on top and just add that much height to it if your tortoise walks tall. They don't mind crouching a little as they go in, but if they're crouching a whole lot, maybe their shell's going to get scrunched, and that's going to bother you. Probably won't bother them, but it'll get a little rubbed on top. Anything else, Diane? Were you?
Well, I have those round pillars, and they're
Oh, yeah.
10
Mhm.
inches tall. To recycle them, can I use those for lining my burrow?
To make the burrow?
Yeah, because they're like this big around and 10 inches.
Yeah, I remember those. Janina, did you work with Diane on that? You mean making the inside of the burrow out of that? That's a cool idea. Why not?
Yeah, so
That would be nicer than cement block because she's got some smooth cylinders. And cement block is so rough that we line it with plywood so that the shell doesn't get scraped.
So
That would be good.
they're too tall then?
10 inches? Well, you can fill it up with dirt.
Okay.
So then, if you make the burrow, say 9 inches high, just for whatever, and you think your tortoise is only about 6, and then you're leaving 1/2 inch for walking, you can fill it up with 3 inches of dirt and pack it in there, and as the tortoise grows, they'll kick it out. They go in there and they just kick like crazy, because we don't know diddly about making tortoise things right. Suzanne?
I missed what the liner was you were talking about. Liner?
We lined the cement blocks with plywood.
Yeah, but what's the new stuff she just...
On top, to raise the height of the cement blocks, we just put a layer of styrofoam. There's a styrofoam sheet,
Oh, okay.
and then cut it out. Janina has some pictures of that over here, Suzanne, that she can show you.
I thought you were saying that you were using that.
And when you come to see about building a burrow, you'll see it in action. And it makes it so clear that way, but of course, pretty soon Jim's going to have a video of that. I know. That'll make it really easy. Yes, Nancy?
Also advertised on TV, they have that gook that you can spray to insulate stuff.
See, Marv's shaking his head there. Do you want to say why, Marv?
Anything, any kind of glue or
It's not glue.
spray
Goop.
that you put inside, yes, rubber, it's a spray. Anything that sprays out of a can or is a glue is going to off-gas inside the tortoise burrow, and it's not good for them to breathe that. So that's why, rather than, it's a pain in the butt to screw the plywood to the sides of the cement blocks to protect their shells, but you can't use glue in there because it's going to off-gas, and it's all those off-gases from the chemicals are going to stay in the burrow.
And tortoises are really sensitive to those fragrances. Same with the pesticides that the pesticide guy sprays. So just if just for instance, if the pesticide guy is spraying, just have him not spray where your tortoise is. And but not use any kind of an accelerant or glue in the burrow. Well, that's the same thing. Well, you know how nasty paint is.
Unless you buy a very expensive, no VOC paint. Yeah, the VOC is volatile organic compounds. That's what gives you the smell.
But why would you put paint into a burrow?
Yeah, I really wouldn't bother.
Do you think that, hey, maybe that's it. Debbie's thinking that already. The color coordination in there, it'll make all the difference. But we'll need to do a study on which colors are more dirt color, I think, probably. Yes.
I have one more question. It's about ants.
Ants.
Are they bothersome to the tortoise? I mean, are they going to get in his burrow and make their own little home?
They're nasty to me.
Just soak
Here.
cotton ball in boric acid and corn syrup. You can find the recipe online, and you can put those near the burrow, especially right now because the tortoises aren't.
Can everyone hear this, or shall I?
Put a cotton ball
Here.
in boric acid and corn syrup. You can find the recipe online. And right now, especially because the tortoises aren't awake, put it near the burrow so the ants will come to that and it'll actually kill the ants off. And they'll take it back, but it's not toxic.
Boric acid and
Corn syrup.
corn syrup.
You dilute the corn syrup?
So sugar and boric
The
acid.
exact recipe, but find it online. It's really just Google ant poison.
So you want to make sure that the tortoise isn't going to eat that. So you might stick it in a jar that the tortoise can't go in or something like that. But to avoid ants, the main thing is to not leave the food out. Of course, everybody likes it. The birds, the dogs, the rabbits, everybody. So roaches, they love it. If you leave it out overnight, you forget, and you go out, you say, oh gosh, the food's out there. 10 o'clock, you can't see it because it's black with roaches. Oh, God. So, when you feed your tortoise, you want it to be wet, juicy mash. So you go out, you feed the tortoise. If you have the time, just stand with the tortoise. Mine doesn't take that long to eat all that food up, especially when I fix it up for him. So, just wait, fix it up, give him the food, and then pick it up and take it in. And then it won't be out there for the ants. So that's one thing. If you find an ant house right by the burrow, that's something else. Now, if you have babies, the ants can kill the babies. I've seen that personally, but I don't see that it bothers big ones. But I sure wouldn't want, if I had ants in my burrow, I don't know what I would do. Has anyone had ants in their burrow? Or was this theoretical?
I was just worried because I noticed that in my planter, my raised planter, I have ants. And I've been trying to fight them, but I was just worried about them getting in the burrow with the turtle.
Well, they have to have a reason to go in there. And of course, the reason is tortoise poops, and that's about it. In the burrow, you're going to find black widow spiders, cockroaches, other spiders. Well, it's kind of a nice little habitat, and they all get along in there, and that's okay. Has anyone ever had a problem with roaches and...
Black widows, talk about that, are they a problem?
Well, once I put on an email that said they're not a problem, and whoo! I got an email back that said it could kill a tortoise. Well, if you put your hand in the burrow and you poke a black widow spider, it's going to bite you. If you slide your hand in and it sees you coming, it's going to tear off somewhere else. They're very timid, and they're not going to bother the tortoise unless, as this gentleman said in his email, like for instance, maybe it would be walking along and the tortoise would feel it and squish, and then it would try to bite it. But it's really rare. I've talked with the vets about that. Have you had any experience with that? No.
We've never seen them.
No. It's just, It's just they all live naturally there together, and whether it's a burrow in our backyard or a caliche den out in the wild, it's a nice little grouping, you know. Anyone else? Yes?
I just wondered if you could line it with vinyl instead of plywood, because it's smooth.
Well, the same thing, it's going to outgas.
Well, I mean, not use like an adhesive, but just,
Well, vinyl smells. It's got that plastic exudate, well, you know that new car smell, that stuff, that it exudes something for a very long time. How would you affix it?
well, it would probably just stick to the curb if it's thick enough.
I think it would probably just rip after the first couple of rubs of the tortoise on it.
Because you can get
Well,
those
thank-
runoffs really cheap, and you can clean that easily, you know, you can
What are-
you can actually clean that.
Okay, let me just say, this is inside the tortoise burrow, right?
Put it inside.
Now, why are you cleaning the inside?
Well, I'm just asking, I'm new.
You wouldn't? Okay, we never clean it.
Oh, so you never go in there and...
And you definitely wouldn't hose it because you wouldn't want any water to get into the burrow. It's very important for the tortoise to live outside in an absolutely dry area.
And it's also fundamentally a requirement that the burrow itself will breathe a little bit. You start-
Right, oh, good point, Chuck.
It becomes airtight or at least watertight, and then that's not what you want. It needs to drain, it needs to breathe, so...
Excellent point.
Staying away from plastics is a good idea. And there's a difference underneath, but above you don't want to do that.
Did you understand the point he was saying? Because we so often think, oh wow, we'll put in a plastic layer and then the burrow won't get wet or something. Or make the burrow out of plastic. You know, the ones that you see at the conservation center, for instance, are made out of plastic, a plastic tubing. That's so they can take them out and spray them down and clean them and sterilize them and put them back. They have to do that. But their burrows don't breathe. And the whole concept of a burrow is that it breathes and it cools by evaporation. And so you don't want a plastic layer in there that will trap the heat and not allow the breathing of this nice burrow, like us, you know.
What was his suggestion? I could not hear it.
He said, don't put a plastic layer in there because then the burrow won't breathe. Well, we better get cracking here. Let's see. If we have more questions, we can always address them later, but if we could go on now to early spring behavior. Well, we know what it's been this year. Just nuts, hasn't it? Could you bring up the other PowerPoint, please? So they didn't go into hibernation, or they went in early, or they went in way late, or they went in and came out and went in. And this spring they came out early, some of them. Mine was 3 weeks early, but he isn't staying out, he's going in and out. And they're not confused at all. But you know, people are saying, why isn't my tortoise back out? And well, it's just crazy weather. And it's gotten warm too early, and there's Tad. He said, I came out, but boy. So now he's doing what tortoises do in spring, basking. Just basking. So, let's just look at some things for us to do. The first thing to do is to fix up the habitat. You know, it's been a whole winter of wind blowing little bits of stuff in there, so be sure to pick up any trash. And if you have a little tortoise, you know, they surprisingly grow over the winter when you think they're not doing anything. So be sure to look at your yard afresh for places that a tortoise might get stuck. You know that what they do is they'll go in, and because the tortoise shell slopes down, here's Frida sitting here, what a good girl. She hasn't moved or anything. So if she goes into something and it's about the size of the front of her shell, if she's like most tortoises, she won't back up. She'll just keep trying to go forward. Well, if they push and push and push, let's say they could get under there last year, but they can't this year because they're just a little bit higher. So they can push really, really hard and get stuck. And then if it's summer, they will cook and die. So you want to look around your yard anew for anything that could be out there where your tortoise could just get stuck, or places that it could fall off or climb on. That could be a little bit of a problem. Because you know how they get into trouble, if they can. No yard is big enough for them, because this girl would roam over about an acre or more on her own, and not many of us have that much room to give them in our backyards. So check out the other things, plant some new plants if you can. And I want to say that if your tortoise isn't out yet, not to worry. And we have the Goldmans over here who have Herman, who comes out on Memorial Day. That's the end of May. Was it May 31st last year, Sharon? Well, that's his time. So they're not worried that they haven't seen Herman yet, because they know. So if you haven't started doing it yet, do keep a log, because it makes all the difference in that worry, worry, worry thing. Even with weird weather, the tortoise is probably going to come out and go in within about a week or two of its normal time, which is different for every tortoise. Just like us, it's all different. But if the tortoise doesn't come out in spring and time passes, don't let it go too long. No, if people will call me in July and say, my tortoise hasn't come out yet, what should I do? Well, I just wish they had called earlier so we could see. Well, we had some real heavy rains in December, so a burrow could have flooded, it could have gotten all muddy in there, and by, I don't know, sometime in May, that could turn into cement. And that tortoise could be stuck in there. Maybe behind a rock, you know, all kinds of things could happen. So anyway, you could call us for help. We have a snooper, which is a video camera that we put down on a long pole. But what people are doing these days is they put their phone on there, turn on the video, slide it down the burrow, and see what's going on down there. But if you need some help, give us a call. We sure don't want to lose any tortoises. Now, what should we be expecting from these guys? Right now, they're going to come out and they're going to bask for a couple of hours. Their body temperature is about maybe, well, let me see. The average temperature yesterday was 65, but my burrow's not up to 65 yet. That big mass of earth takes quite a long time to warm up. So it's probably maybe 60 in the burrow, or 55. I don't know. I haven't measured it. Has anybody? Powell? Oh, Marv, what is yours?
I've had a sending unit in the burrow all winter since I built it last year.
Uh-huh.
And right now it's at 67 degrees.
67?
The coldest, though, this is my question. The coldest the burrow got all winter long was 52.
Wow.
Which I thought they were supposed to be at 35 to 50.
Well, unfortunately, that was when it was colder. Powell, what was yours? Do you know?
I haven't looked.
Oh, yes.
I've got the recorder in.
That's good. That's part of it. That's like me signing up for the gym.
I will look.
Yeah, I haven't measured mine either, and I wish I had. But anyway, the temperature of the burrow lags the outdoor temperature usually because, or it should, because there's a big mass of earth. So the tortoise, let's say it's at 60 degrees. Outside, it needs to be about 85 degrees before it's really going to start moving around. That's a good temperature, so that's a lot of time for it to sit in the sun, about a couple hours now. And sometimes they'll tip up You know, they'll go against the wall and they'll sort of tip up so that the sun is just at the perfect angle on their back, or maybe they'll turn around so it's on their rear here where the organs are, and they'll just bask. They may not start browsing right away. Mine starts immediately, but I haven't been feeding him. I've just been giving him some leaves and some dandelions, and he's just really not awake yet. Now, how many people have tortoises that are up? So, not even half yet. So if your tortoise isn't out yet, not to worry. And mine has been in and out. I think it's right on the cusp here. And when your tortoise is basking like this and his body temperature hasn't really gotten up into the 80s, he's not able to digest the food yet. So he's just getting ready. So just enjoy for a while. Now after he's been up for a while and it's warm and he's really moving around, mine is just creeping. He's just barely moving around. I wouldn't want to soak him yet. But when he gets going in a little bit, I'm going to put him in there again. And see, I've got about this much water in here. I could put more in. People always ask me how long. And a tortoise often drinks for 20 or 30 minutes, and they just stick their head under the water, and you think they're drowning if you're not used to it, because it isn't what we do, but they just stick their heads down there and they drink and drink, and once in a while you look down here and you see glug, and you say, oh, took a swallow. They also take a little bit of water in through the cloaca, which is the opening in the rear where everything goes in and out. There's only one opening. And when they're ready to get out, they will let you know.
Is that the head?
Yes.
Well, I mean, can he climb out of there on his own? No.
I don't know. He could probably flip and hurt himself, but I don't leave him there. He goes over the edge and claws like crazy all of a sudden, and he says, time to get out of here. So you want to keep them well hydrated. They've been breathing all winter, so they've been losing moisture, and it'd be a good idea to weigh and measure them right away so that you know about that, and then they'll start juicing up, and you want to keep them nice and well hydrated during the year.
Kathy?
Yes?
So in the wild, they don't get that opportunity to bask in water for 20 or 30 minutes, do they?
Well, they don't in the wild, no.
That's not entirely true. Because they will dig holes, like shallow depressions, so when the rain comes, they know exactly where their mud puddle is to go sit and drink.
Right, but he's saying bask. We have some good pictures of that. You know, so they're in the wild. One of the tortoise's strategies for survival is to smell the approaching rain, to go to a place where they know it pools and wait. And if the rain happens, then they get a drink. But they don't often get to wallow in the water, no. And you wouldn't think it would be that deep very often, but maybe it would be in some places. We have a little photo of some water in some lava depressions, so it would stay there. So Renee's going to give us a little bit more information about doing a medical checkup, but you want to look at the nose, make sure it's not bubbly, the eyes, look over the shell, want to feel their muscles. If they don't feel kind of like a baby, you know, how a baby feels all nice and puffy and round, that's how a tortoise should feel. If it feels sort of flabby and flat, that's not good. And we have, let's try it, Jim. Let's see if we can make this work.
You have to go back.
If you right-click and do open hyperlink, it might work.
Go back to the slideshow and it will work.
From the slideshow?
Yeah,
Oh, that's the trick.
Now, sure.
Oh, from here? Oh, look at that. No wonder it didn't work for me. So I wanted to just kind of make sure that you knew where some of our information sheets are. Because I know I refer to them a lot of times, but I'm not sure that anybody looks at them. Oh. Look. There it is. So here are the information sheets. This is our website. Oh. See all these different ones, plants, transplanting dandelions, growing seeds, growing dandelions from seed, planting prickly pear. See, that's where you can get your information. And the bottom part of this there's also one for, obviously this is my first try at this. And I'm sorry that I missed out on the bottom part, but it also has the information sheet on doing a medical checkup, and has lots of things to go through, just to give yourself a little check during the year. Well, let's go back to the other thing there and see how we are. Thank you. So if you would please, would you, when you have a chance, go to the information sheets and see what's there. If you have a swimming pool that's open, you'll want to look at what to do if your tortoise falls in, because it may well not be dead. And they have amazing recuperative powers. And other things, the list of vets. Of course, you'll know where you might want to go after today. Now, as spring progresses, what's going to happen? The tortoise, surprisingly, may sleep outside and not in its burrow, because the burrow's actually going to be colder than the outside temperature. So rather than go in, get all cold, and then have to come out again, your tortoise may go under a little bush for a while. And all year they're going to seek the right temperature. So they're going in and out of sun and shade all day, all year long, to keep their body at the optimum temperature. As the temperature, people often say to me, well, what time should I look for my tortoise? And that's totally dependent upon the time of year. Right now, mine comes out about 10 or 10:30, and he's out most of the day, and then he goes in the late afternoon. As the year progresses, they come out earlier and earlier, and they don't stay out very long. One study that I heard was that a tortoise in summer in the wild has about an hour and a half to do everything that a tortoise needs to do to keep itself alive, which isn't very much time. So ours have it easy, of course. So their day will start earlier. They'll spend less time outside and more in the burrow. However, if you're a working person and you always feed your tortoise when you get home or at noon or whatever it is, you know your tortoise will learn to come out when you're there, because they want to see you and they want to eat and they want to play and get petted and everything else. So they're all different possibilities. I just want to say a little something about plants, because I said go out and get plants and put them in. And I was saying to Merrill, did you plant any of the Cactus Joe's plant seed mix? And he said, oh yes. I said, well, how did it do? He said, really well, up to about that. And then they got eaten up. So they love little sprouts and shoots. So if you want them to last, you need to do something. So we had 2 tufted evening primroses, and they were looking great. And I said, let's just take the covers off. Well, here's the one that lasted, and here's the other one. So here was another one, and we used, as someone suggested, this tomato basket thing, and the plant can grow out I also just had put some petunias in and made little covers out of hardware cloth and made sure there weren't any little pointy corners. And the petunias are now growing out nicely through the hardware cloth. Because you know the tortoise will just eat the petunia right up. They eat the whole thing. Really yummy. I did a little article in the newspaper about dandelions and thistles, but I want to point them out again. If there are lots of them, they're probably thistles. You know how that goes. And if they're tall, one sec.
What's hardware cloth?
Hardware cloth is
Chicken fencing.
chicken fencing, Bob says. It's a material you can buy at the hardware store. It comes with different size holes, so it makes rectangles of either 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, or 1 inch. Does it come in 1 inch?
It's like chicken wire material?
No, well, it's thicker.
Different.
Much, much thicker material.
Okay.
You could use chicken wire.
And that stuff is so cheap.
It's kind of wimpy though. This stuff is hard, much harder. So this is 1/2 inch hardware cloth.
Okay, so I'm gonna need it because of the new puppy is eating all the greenery.
The puppy's eating the greenery. Did you tell him it was for the tortoise?
Even my eyeglasses got chewed up.
Let me get back to the dandelion. The dandelion grows flat, and the dandelions grow up out of it, point right up, and they're kind of rounded. The flower's kind of rounded. Where these thistle things grow, the leaves grow up. This isn't a very good picture, and I apologize for it, but there it is. It's a little bit different color. The leaves are spiky looking and spiny looking, and they even if you try to make it look like a dandelion, it's really not. It gets purpley looking, and they grow tall. So if it's growing up like this and there are leaves coming off it, get rid of that thing fast because it'll be everywhere. And of course, if it is everywhere, as I said, it's probably a thistle. Dandelions don't grow as readily as the others. Ooh, this way. So these are some of the things I wanted to point out on the website, but you can look those things up. Now Susan made up a whole lot more of our kits that you can purchase to mark your tortoise, so that if your tortoise should escape, you'll have your phone number on the back of it. And our little kit is good for 5 or 6 tortoises, or you, your friends, or all of your tortoises. Don't forget to do that. The heartache of losing a tortoise is terrible. And there's my Tad launching into a dandelion. So with that, finally, we're going to have refreshments. And if you have any questions, oh, wait a minute. No, not yet. Are there any more questions about the behavior? I want to ask one thing. It takes a lot of people to run this meeting, a lot, and we really could use some help. Once or twice, or somebody who would be a refreshment coordinator, someone who would like to coordinate all the meetings, or run the computer, help set up the chairs, or something. I'm going to send around some sign-up sheets, and I hope that you'll take the opportunity to sign up. And if there's anything else you're interested in, just put it in there too. And when am I going to do this? Not now. I'll put them out here now, and then I'll send them around later as well. So take 15 minutes or so to have some refreshments and find out stuff. Help yourselves to these things up here, the cactus pads and the dandelion seeds, and the 1 each, please, but tons of the cactus joes, and we'll be handing these petunias out after the meeting. So after that, we'll hear from Renee. Thank you. I want to go back to the meeting thing before I introduce Renee, because it takes a whole lot of people to put on this meeting. And we have Audrey and Meryl here who are greeting. We have Larry, who brought all the mega diet, Larry and his friend David, who brought tons of stuff from storage and will take it back. We have Trilla and her sales crew back here. We have Scott on the video, Susan, who brought refreshments. Who am I missing? Me, Jim, the setup. And so there's an awful lot to do. And if we could have some more help, it would be great. And so, again, I want to ask you to sign up, if you will. I'm going to send these around, one on each side, and hope you'll plop your name down, especially somebody to, see that we get refreshments every time, or something like that. Now, here we have Renee Hussey. She's from Creature Comforts Animal Hospital. That's over at Anna 95. You can kind of almost see it from 95 as you pass Ann Road on the east side of the street. She's been there for 10 years. She's a vet tech, and she's been working hard there. They do a lot of exotic animals and a lot of tortoises. And then she decided, well, she's been moving up. And now she's in veterinary school in Dublin, Ireland. And she's just finishing her second year, and she has been gracious enough to come and speak to us today. So please welcome Renee Hussey.
Thank you. Oh, is it supposed to be red?
It's supposed to, look.
No, thank you.
How do you do that? Okay.
I don't want you to be confused by the title. My first name's Jacqueline. I go by Renee. It's shorter, it's easier to spell. I've always gone by Renee since I was a little kid, so don't let that part confuse you. The major thing today, just big message to get across, is that most of the health issues that we see with the desert tortoise comes from improper habitat or improper diet. The biggest majority of the health issues we see is all related to that. And I'll go through some of the various ones. Some things you guys probably already know, maybe don't know. You have a very unique pet. It's only found in this one part of the world. Some parts of California, a little bit of Utah, Arizona, and northern Mexico. There's other tortoises out there, but you would be surprised the amount of differences you can have between tortoises, or even birds will have different blood work values or heart rates or temperatures. It's a very large range. These particular tortoises can live definitely over 80 years, so you're in for the long haul. I've met some people that put them in their wills because they want to make sure that when they pass that their family member knows where it's going. They get to a nice 10 to 14 inches, pretty heavy, 15 pounds, at least when you have to hold them for a while, they get pretty heavy. They're around 8 inches by the time they're 16 years old, and a lot of times we'll use their growth rate to see average how old they are at that point.
8 inches wide?
8 inches long. Yep. They really like the temperatures 70 to 93, and that's why your hibernation's in the winter. They start to come out when we're getting into the 70s, and their pattern throughout the daytime is so they can be out when it's that 70 to 93 degrees out. This is because they're cold-blooded. They use the sun, they use the environment to warm themselves up, and all of this is actually tied to their metabolism. They need to warm up in order to digest, so that can show you why you can have some health issues if they aren't getting that warm enough. Here's just their general life cycle, nice picture. They start out smaller than a ping pong ball. It's very surprising how little they are when they come out. I think they're the cutest when they're there. They do spend a good portion of their time in the burrow throughout their life cycle, especially that can be up to 5 months in the burrow over the winter. They come out in the springtime, Their mating can be any time that they're out in the warmth, but a lot of times it's in the fall. Of course, hopefully none of you guys are seeing that. We don't like to have our house ones mating because we have quite a bit to take care of and find homes for as it is. Out in the wild, there's a very small portion of them that actually do survive. It's, say, 1 to 5 for every 100. This is a common question that we get, and that's, everybody wants to know, do I have a boy or a girl? The biggest parts that you're using to tell is the bottom of their shell on the male slopes up towards his tail, so he's got a more prominent chest, kind of like thinking the guy sticking his chest out. And he's also got a longer front piece of that shell. And the tail sticks out farther beyond the back of their shell. The female has the shorter horn in front, a nice flat bottom belly, and a shorter tail all tucked up. And if you guys do ever have questions, is it a boy or girl? Our clinic doesn't mind, at least, or I'm sure there's plenty of people in the Desert Tortoise group that if you just want to send a picture by email, someone will help you figure it out. And the best type of picture to take is one from the side, as you see in the drawings on the left. The pictures that I've got on here, the one on the bottom is a male with that nice horn sticking out pretty far, and the one on top is a female where you can't really see that horn or her tail sticking past.
Question?
Yep.
Can they do blood work very early on to tell male and female or not?
We've never actually run blood work to figure it out. That would be something I'd have to call we use Avian and Exotics, a specialty lab. I wouldn't be surprised if they have something. So if you're pretty curious about that, you can call my clinic and they'll probably know sometime in the next week now that we've asked it. So their diet. Out in the wild, you've all, I'm sure, gone walking through the desert at some point. You see the plants that are out there. There's a variety. The biggest part of their diet we want them starting on is just some nice Bermuda grass. This is the common type, not the hybrid. Some nice dandelions, and that's what this little guy down here is enjoying. And there's so many different plants that you can put in your backyard that are nutritious for them. The Mega Diet pellets do really ensure that they have a nice, well-rounded diet, that they aren't missing anything. They get those, I think the new recommendation is 2 to 3 times a week on top of the grass and browsing that they have in their backyard that you've got them set up with. The last part that you want to give them is the treats, and those ones are really just for you guys to choose. You want healthy stuff. Dark leafy vegetables are the best. The dandelions are good. These are really just give them sparingly, maybe a couple times a week when you think about it. The ones you want to avoid really that don't have a lot of nutrition are your fruits. And everyone thinks of, the lettuce that we eat in our salads. Don't actually give them much nutrition, so they're kind of a waste to give them to them. And if you get them to like them too much, you can actually get them onto a very improper diet. Tomatoes is another one where it's a lot of water, not really enough nutrition for them, so it's better for them to concentrate on the stuff that's good for them. They will also often eat dirt or even rocks out in their yard, and that is pretty normal. Some of them, they can get a little calcium from the soil. There are people that believe that eating rocks helps them digest. It moves the food around in their gut. So we'll often take x-rays and see a nice little gravel pattern along in their intestines. The Mega Diet you're giving is nice and softened with water, and that's because most of the water that they're getting is from what they eat. So the grass already has lots and lots of water in it, so you want to make sure your Mega Diet has the same. There are some toxic plants. Two of the biggest ones that we have in our backyards here are oleander and tomato plants. And the tomato plant, we're thinking the leaves and the stems. It's safest just not to have them in the backyard, but there's a lot of tortoises that they'll try them once and then they'll avoid them. They'll take a taste and immediately know that they won't eat that. The Tortoise Group website is where you're going to find, like she showed you, the biggest list of all the different plants that you can try in your backyard. You can change it up every year. Yep.
Is avocado okay as a tree?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think most of the time we like to stick to just your leafy greens for your treats. There is quite a few vegetables that are safe for them to eat, just not necessarily beneficial. But there's quite a big list. She may have it on the website. I haven't actually looked. I just know that at my clinic we have a nice tortoise book that gives us a list of the vegetables and fruits that they're okay to ingest, not necessarily give to them on a daily basis. So other things they need in their habitat, they're going to need their warm temperatures. They're going to need their nice burrow. The food, of course, lots of food available. Water's kind of depends on what you got set up. And then escape proofing. These guys are pretty good at getting out of your backyards if you aren't aware of it. The best burrows, they stay dry, so they tend to be a little bit elevated. They're a nice snug fit. You don't want too much space for them to get in there, but they do have to get in and then turn around all the way at the end and come back out. Usually the ones that don't work well are dog sheds, or dog houses or sheds. Those have too much space, and they won't get it to be the right temperature for them in there. They're really good at choosing the wrong location in your backyard. They also can't always get past the caliche layer in ours and get it to the right level that they've got a nice cool area in there in the summer. So it is safer to choose a location, to have someone from the Tortoise Group come out and look at your backyard and tell you where it would be best to dig a shelter for them. Oh, actually there are some hazards, some pretty common ones. Of course, our dog, cats, and children can be a danger to our tortoises. And it all depends on, did they grow up with them? The children, the biggest one with kids is just that the tortoises, they're really easy to pick up and handle and give lots of love to, but you can actually have them out too long and have them out in the sun and they get too warm. So you just want to make sure that the kids know to let them down and let them have their chance to go back in the shade and keep their temperature down. Pools and ponds, they don't swim. The shallow basins that some people will put in their yards for them to go in and soak in, they shouldn't be deep enough for the tortoise to go in and his head is completely submerged underwater. So say if it goes all the way up to the top of his shell, that's a little too deep. You want it to where he can comfortably put his head out. And then your toxic plants or weed and pest killers on these plants. Tortoises shouldn't stay indoors. These desert tortoises really do best outside. It's very difficult to keep your indoor environment warm enough for them, and they shouldn't be only fed fruits and vegetables from the store. You want a nice mixture of that stuff in your backyard, or dandelion greens and the pellets. Here are just some pictures. Most of this I actually got from the Desert Tortoise Group. Just the one on the left is your no-no. You don't want a little enclosure like that. And the biggest thing there, can anyone see what that's missing right off the bat? Shade. Yeah, shade. No place to hide. And even against the side of the panels where maybe there'd be a little shade, it's just not going to be enough to cool this guy down. The other thing is it's all grass too. And grass stays nice and moist. This guy should have some place to crawl and be able to dry out well. The other thing that we'll see some people do is, and these are again, if they're kept indoors a lot, in this big glass aquarium, sometimes they'll just take the whole aquarium and wheel it outside. Those glass walls make the whole thing heat up. So that's also something you don't want to do. So it's a very long process, but it's definitely worth it for the health of your tortoise if you want one to stay alive for that 80 years and not be, hounded by constant health problems. Getting this nice dug-in pit or above-ground burrow, it's really worth it. This one I just thought was a really pretty picture in the middle here. They have the... It's my yard. It's really pretty. I kept telling people that I've seen so many different variations of what you can do with the backyard and the different plants that you can put up. She's got her nice natural water where choose to go into if we feel like it. Some shady areas so we can choose to bask, or if we don't want to go in the burrow's not right temperature, to hide under the plants, and lots of options to chew on. And then of course the burrow's in a nice dry area, raised up, so it's not likely for water to sink in there, keep that moist. So these are going to be some of your, this is what we'll see when we see an indoor tortoise come in. So looks pretty, it's so nice to think, and a lot of them are the smaller ones. The smaller ones are so much easier to keep indoors, but this is their biggest growth period when it's actually most important that they're getting the right environment. And I'll go more over what you're seeing on the right here, but we can actually tell when they come in, this guy's been indoors his whole life. Biggest thing, they don't get warm enough. It's not fun. He doesn't get a large enough space to roam around, and he's not getting enough UVB rays, which is what they're getting from the sunlight to create their bones. So every time they come out, we usually recommend that's when you get their yearly exam. It's just really easy to keep track of, and it's going to let you catch anything that may have happened over the very long last maybe 5 months that they've been buried in a hole. There are definitely some checkpoints that kind of we use to keep track that we've covered everything with their physical exam. Look at their eyes. Are they swollen? Are they gooped up? Look at their mouth. Do we have an overbite or an underbite? And they can actually overgrow, and again, this is a nutritional thing. If they aren't eating the right food, getting the right vitamins, it can actually grow too fast and then interfere with them eating properly. The overbite's much more common than the underbite, and you'll see that beak grow actually below their chin. We do also use their breathing rate. You shouldn't be able to hear a whole lot when they're breathing, and I don't know if any of you've done it yet. I do it just because I'm a vet student. You just go around your animals and you kind of just listen to them when they're normal. So you get used to what their normal is, and that way when they do suddenly, you can hear their breathing easier. It's kind of just a red flag that maybe something's going on, might have an upper respiratory infection. So any kind of wheezing, whistling from the nostrils, nasal discharge, nasal clogged up, blowing bubbles. The other thing, which won't be easy for you guys to check at home, is we do recommend checking their poop for parasites. And I'll go over that one a little more detail in a minute. And then the body condition, how does their shell look? Is there any scraped up parts? Any injured parts? How does their skin look? And like she was saying, that nice, and you want to be able to feel their muscle. You shouldn't be able to pinch their skin and their skin feels dry or really flabby, or just, you can actually feel thin skin. So these are going to be some of the common health issues that we see them come in with. Upper respiratory infections, so that's like your pneumonia, bladder stones, parasites, soft shell, vitamin A deficiency, the shell injuries, impaction, and unfortunately drowning occasionally. The impaction they get from overeating of sand or eating the wrong type of sand in the backyard, or if you have like a clay or a substrate that if it mixes with water gets really thick and difficult for them to pass. So this guy on the right, he's got an upper respiratory infection. The owner brought him in because she said she could start to hear him breathe, and she doesn't normally. He was doing nice whistling for her. Sometimes when they get this, they'll open their mouths to breathe because they really just can't breathe through their nose anymore. It's all stuffed up. Blowing bubbles, like I said, the nasal discharge. He's also got some pretty swollen eyes and not eating well. They can get pretty thin. They don't feel well. This is another one that I think they end up with pretty pictures, but it's not comfortable for them. And what you have on the right here is an x-ray of a urinary stone. Normally their urine is this, it can be really thick, white, pasty stuff. And it gets that way just because of the way that it digests protein. It sits in their bladder for months at a time, sometimes before they urinate. When they get too dehydrated, that stuff can clump together and start to form stones in there. They're unique because their anatomy, they actually, instead of having one nice round bladder, it's got two parts to it, lobe off to the right and a lobe off to the left. And they can get, most commonly, you actually find it on the left side of that lobe, but we've even seen 2 stones in one tortoise, and one on each side. They don't always necessarily pose an emergency to get it out. We may find it just because we have, we did x-rays to make sure we're healthy. We do have the occasional owner that just wants us to do blood work on them once a year, wants us to take x-rays once a year to make sure nothing's coming up. And we've found this sometimes, and the tortoise isn't showing any signs that there's a problem. But we do also see them come in sick from it. And as you can imagine, our guts are twisting around in here. It can make it difficult for that poop to move around and to get out. And that's when you tend to see them not feeling well. It will also decrease the amount of space that their stomach has. And if that poop is backing up, again, you don't have much space to bring in new food, so they'll eat less and they'll start to lose weight. They may also have problems urinating, and this could mean you have a little bit of blood in the urine, or that they can't produce it. Maybe that stone is blocking it getting out. So those are your ones that we do tend to recommend solving with surgery. Unfortunately, there's no other way to fix this except for surgery. I don't know if any of you knew that we do surgery on tortoises occasionally. And these are pictures of, we have taken out a few at my clinic. We do actually have to go through the shell. And this is why you won't see spaying and neutering of tortoises, because it's very invasive to go in there to get through that shell. That is a bladder stone in the middle. It can get to the size of a baseball. They get very large, and so you can imagine it doesn't feel very good. So we saw that open, take the stone out, sew them back up, and we do have to glue the shell back on. So this funny patchwork on the right here is actually, there's a metal mesh that you use to help support it, and they've got lots of glue underneath and above to help keep that on there. Most of them, by the time that glue eventually wears off, the shell is reattached itself. The other thing, like I said earlier, we do see parasites, and this is a picture of the most common one that we get, and it's called a pinworm. They aren't always a problem, again, and this is one thing I've learned from being in Ireland. They've got worms everywhere. All of their pets have worms, and that is because they're stuck on an island about the size of Nevada. Everything is green and wet, and the parasites love it. They thrive. So all of their pets just get reinfected, and then the eggs end up on the same pasture, and then they reinfect themselves, and they just get heavier and heavier burdens. They do things a little bit differently than us, where they only treat when it's actually showing an impact, or they see a certain number of eggs in the poop that they've shown by research impacts how the animal behaves. So you may find a difference of opinions depending on your veterinarian. Some of them will treat no matter what. If they see pinworm eggs, they'll recommend giving Panacure, which is the medication to get rid of it. Others say, well, it's only one and your tortoise is acting fine, so we're not going to give anything unless we're actually seeing that they aren't acting well. And you can see it interfere with how much nutrition they get. A little bit of watery stool, and since we're worried about these guys getting dehydrated anyway, watery stool is definitely not a good thing. So if they're losing weight, or even if they seem to be predisposed to other infections, that may be enough reason to treat them for these pinworms. The downside is once they do get them, it's very difficult to get rid of them from your yard. Your burrow's in a nice shaded area, and although it is, you try to keep it dry, some moisture's in there, and the shade is in there. And the way that these eggs are killed in the environment is it gets nice and dry and hot, so their own scat going into their burrow may get their burrow infected, and it stays infected. So they can commonly show up every year with these pinworms. The one on the left is just a picture of how we run the test. We get a little poop. You want it nice and fresh so you know it's accurate. Go ahead.
What are can it be transferred to like dogs and cats and stuff too?
Nope, this one's pretty specific to tortoises.
Okay.
So fresh is better, it's more accurate. We're more likely to find it in there because once that poop dries out, it'll start killing off the eggs.
So have you had many cases here in Vegas with pinworms?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it really depends. They could, they get it from their mother or from the scat from where they hatched. It's already there, or they eat the mother's scat and they get it and it stays in them and then they reinfect themselves. Like I said, it just depends on the veterinarian you talk to whether or not they're really concerned about it, if it's causing any health issues. This is that soft shell. So this is kind of that picture you saw earlier of what can happen when they're kept indoors. So we've kind of got two different things going on. On the left is a growth pattern called pyramiding. On the right is soft shell, which also may be called like metabolic bone disease or osteodystrophy. All fancy terms for saying we don't have enough calcium, and so our bones aren't getting nice and hard like they're supposed to. And the shell is just another extension of the bone, so it does the same thing. And it will actually feel just wrong in some places. Or these guys, in the little lizards, since you can't see it in the shell, they get malformed arms or broken bones very easily. The pyramiding isn't necessarily just from calcium. It can also be they grow too quickly, and this can be from the amount of protein they're getting in the diet. They're not getting enough calcium, they aren't getting enough sunlight, so it's a mixture of different things that can cause that kind of growth pattern. Swollen eyelids. This one has a mixture. This isn't a desert tortoise. I couldn't find a really good picture with a desert tortoise with swollen eyes. This one is vitamin A deficiency. So again, it's just from feeding a lot of fruit and vegetables from the store, not real dark leafy stuff or the pellets. And the vitamin A deficiency interferes with a lot of things. It can predispose them to the eye infection, skin infections, upper respiratory infections, and then of course, because they're not feeling well, they lose weight and they aren't eating well.
Vitamin A's in green leafy vegetables?
It's in their green leafy vegetables and the mega diet. I didn't actually know if that would work. So we do definitely see them come in with shell injuries. And this isn't always a house pet. Sometimes we have someone bring in a tortoise because their dog went out into the desert and they found it when they were on a hike. Others are complete best friends and they were raised with it, have no problem with the tortoise. The ones you have to keep the most eye on, of course, are puppies. They like to chew on things. And we have seen the occasional come in and they just got the edge of the shell and it looks a little torn, but there is blood supply in there. It can get infected, it does hurt. So just keep an eye on them when you're first introducing them into the household or you're raising a new puppy.
Would you just mention that that's a sultata, that is not a desert tortoise? They don't get that.
Sure. Not a desert tortoise, but it's a fun picture to watch.
Yes.
I know, you'd have to have a pretty small dog. It'd probably be like a chihuahua if it was on the back of a desert tortoise. Some of them are certainly fixable. I've seen a tortoise come in before where he lost his leg, but we fixed him up and he moves around pretty well with just 3 legs. And I ran across this picture of a lady who had fixed hers up with kind of a prosthesis, pretty cheap one. But she said he was doing great, moving around, no problem with it, and he doesn't mind. Again, it makes things more tricky because he had to make sure he can't get stuck in the backyard. The other one, we'll see him come in with cracked shells from, they got a little too close to a car. And that one just shows you really do have a lot of blood supply to that, and that really is their only layer between their organs and the outside world. The other one is lawnmowers. If you don't know that you have a tortoise in your backyard, you're out mowing your grass. I've seen someone bring that in before. This one is the scariest. Of course, we don't like to come home and find a tortoise in our pool or a pond. And sometimes they've got a great backyard setup and they just have no idea how their tortoise figured out how to get out of it and to the pool. So you do want definitely some protection between them and the pool. A nice fenced-in area keeps them away from it. Be aware that they burrow. Keep an eye that they aren't burrowing near that. The nice thing is that they're surprisingly good at surviving this. Sometimes you'll You'll think you come home and they're gone, but you do some resuscitation and they come out of it. And I mean, heard some people who had it hours later that brought it out, and it just woke up after they tried. So if you ever run across this, you do pull them out as soon as you can. You hold it upside down so that water will trickle out of the lungs, out of the mouth, and you press on the flanks, so this is their back end, to help kind of push that forward.
Does upside down mean tail up or belly up?
You want, so their back, I can demonstrate. So you really do have them back like this, and you're helping push on their flanks to help increase the pressure in their chest, in their shell, to help push out that water. So just like you would imagine, so it helps slope and bring that water out. And they do also, you do also have, instead of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you have mouth-to-nose resuscitation, which means you're closing the mouth and breathing the air into their nose. This is to help expand the lungs, hopefully jumpstart things. They haven't shown that you need to do CPR, which I couldn't imagine would be possible anyway through this shell, but you can get them to come back with just the mouth-to-nose resuscitation and clearing that water out of there. If you are close enough to a veterinary hospital that you know sees exotics, you can bring them there too. They have stethoscopes with amplifiers that help them hear the heart through the shell, so it would really just double check for you, are we really gone or could we keep trying? And some people have tried up to 15-20 minutes and gotten them back. So they can certainly get sick afterwards, get pneumonia, so if this ever happens, we just want them kept nice and warm afterwards. You keep an eye on them so they aren't, if they're too lethargic, they won't move back into the shelter and they could overheat themselves then. So you may give them a smaller area to roam around with near their burrow, and expect them to be a little off for a couple weeks. Some of them will give them some doctors will give them an antibiotic no matter what, just because that likelihood of getting pneumonia is so high. Just general care for a sick tortoise. Hopefully none of you have ever had to medicate one or will have to medicate one. I hope everyone stays nice and healthy. It's not an easy thing. They're pretty stubborn about letting you open their mouth when they don't want to. So some things for caring for a sick tortoise. Big part is warmth. A lot of people think, oh, we're sick, I gotta bring you in so I can keep an eye on you, and that's actually the worst thing that you could do for them. You don't want to bring them indoors. You want them to have that access both to the sunlight and the warm temperature. They have to have that to, like I said, they use it for metabolizing, for digestion. Their immune system also plummets when they're too cold. Everything really slows down and doesn't work well when they're too cold. The other thing we'll do a lot for the guys that come and stay in the hospital with us, we do soaks more often. They may not be eating well, and a lot of that moisture they get is from their food, so we have to soak them a little more often to prevent that dehydration. Same as us, you feel better if you aren't dehydrated while you're trying to recover from something. And that's that lukewarm water, 20 to 30 minutes. Just high enough. It's usually about halfway up their shell so they can comfortably leave their head out of it. And again, they may be lethargic, so you just have to keep an eye on them while they're in these things to make sure they aren't leaving their head down in the water. And then the UV light, like I said, lots of sunlight. This is another one that's always the funnest to explain how to do. Most of the time, when you want to look into their mouth, they're really easy to convince, but that requires them eating. And that's just, you know what their favorite treat is. Maybe it's a particularly colored flower, yellow, purple, pink. Everyone seems to have a tortoise that likes a different color. You show that to them and they'll just stick their tongue right out to go for it. And you can really get a good look in their mouth while they're doing that to check for any redness, any sores, any discharge. And this guy on the right, again, not a desert tortoise, but he's a good example of some of the gross stuff that can build up in their mouth. He's got a nice mouth infection going on, and could have spread from an upper respiratory tract infection. He could have damaged it on something. Poor nutrition could have predisposed him to it, anything. It also shows how we hold their head when we're trying to get a good look in their mouth and they won't let us. So this is usually at the vet's clinic where they're stressed. They don't want to open it when they're stressed. So we had to just get a nice grip on either side of their head, and usually that means we put him down on the ground, we let him walk around so he'll relax enough to stick his head out, and then we just gently put a thumb and forefinger on either side of our head here and get a good grip. And they've got lots of muscle, so they're really good at smashing your fingers and pulling it back in. And once we have that nice and secure, and this usually takes 2 people, especially when we have one that's a 15-pound tortoise with that muscle pulling his head back. One will be holding the head, and the other one gets a nice, flat, blunt-edged object just to stick it in the corner of the mouth and kind of pry it open. And we do have special silver objects that we use to open it that have a gap in the middle. That way it doesn't block our view of the mouth inside. And that would be the same way if you have to give pills that you would medicate them. So unfortunately, you have to trap their head, and you get that mouth open and stick the pill in. And they can spit it back out. They're not as good as dogs, but that big pink fleshy tongue just pushes that pill out right when you think you got it. The only other way that we've medicated them is they can get injections. So yes, we certainly get some that are impossible to medicate, can't hide it in any treat, they aren't eating well, or they know, they smell it in there. And those ones we give injections instead, maybe an antibiotic. And this is just another thing that I find interesting with tortoises, because they have a circulatory system where you can't give injections anywhere except for these front legs. If you give them the back legs, it actually goes through their liver and gets processed before it can go anywhere to work. And we really do just find an area between the shell pieces, and that's where the needle goes. They can get sore, can kind of limp from it, but if you ever do have a sick tortoise, you just may see them using that treatment as well. I think someone had mentioned blood work earlier, so we said, I'm not sure if they do sexing with blood work, but we do occasionally run it. And this may be, we have some owners that just like to run it once a year, make sure nothing's popping up, because you can't tell otherwise. Maybe it's real early and they aren't showing physical signs that they're sick. But we have found, so they can get anemia, and anemia can just be a side effect of any chronic disease, or there's the rare blood parasite that these guys can get. We look at white blood cells, which are what your body uses to respond to infection or inflammation. And sometimes you can have, say your tortoise just isn't eating well, and we find that their white blood cell count is elevated. We will assume that we might have an infection somewhere and start them on antibiotics, even though we aren't wheezing or puffy-eyed. We can find dehydration or early kidney disease, and this can be from your improper diet. Malnutrition, and this is, we will find low calcium levels, although usually you'll see outward signs of that. This would be more of an early indicator that you're feeding your tortoise the wrong diet, and that we should make something change so we prevent any problems from developing. And then protein levels, which may show parasitic infections or inflammation again. Last thing, anyone who has pets or has owned lizards, tortoises, they all do carry salmonella. There's different types of salmonella. It has to be a specific strain to be harmful to you, but it is just best to be precautious, especially with kids, that you wash your hands after you handle them, or you handle anywhere in their burrow where their scat is. Children who forget this would be at the greatest risk. Okay. Anyone have questions for me specifically? Go ahead.
You have a bell on your stethoscope and you hear it through the shell?
You can. It takes some practice. You can't hear it as well.
Where on, and it would be on the other side?
So I've got 2 different ones on here. This one's more broad, so it lets you listen to a larger area, but it wouldn't be as focused, so you may miss a really small problem. And the second bell is smaller, so you may miss the heart, but if you're over the right position, you'd hear clearer sounds. Yeah, it's pretty centralized. Let me go back to that. There we go. Yep, so you've got your same general as us. You've got your lungs up at the top, the heart in the middle there. Liver's next, below that, taking up a lot of space. Lots of guts.
And fecal material, is it different when it has parasites in it?
Not always. Sometimes it requires them to have a certain level of parasites first. So it may be completely normal, it may have blood in it, may be diarrhea. Just really depends. Okay?
If they have an injury on their shell, can you do saline or just soaking or?
Regular saline is okay to keep it flushed, and it's actually better for injuries just to flush it out with saline and not something with a chemical in it. Definitely not hydrogen peroxide. So water is actually better than just saline, than just betadine or Chlorhex or any of those other antibacterials that you'll find out there. And that's just because it's going to wash the debris out there. The bacteria grow, and it will help keep the bacteria population down. And usually it just keeps it down well enough that their own body can take care of it. Unfortunately, these guys they tend to get infections really easily on the shell, so sometimes just flushing it a couple times a day will keep the infection away, but a lot of times with an injury on the shell, they do need antibiotics.
What primordial count would you start treating?
I work at a clinic where she prefers that it's safer if you find them at all to treat them with it. I haven't had any experience because the ranges differ depending on the veterinarian you're talking to. Some will just use, if they're clinically sick, I'll give them medication instead of the level of word eggs. And that's because it can be so inaccurate. The more the poop dries out, the less eggs you'll find. The smaller sample you have, the less eggs you'll find. So it's really difficult to use that fecal egg counting.
Is there a special certification for a vet in tortoises or reptiles? Is there something you should look for when you look for a vet in your own neighborhood?
Unfortunately, there's not. Most veterinarians are very straightforward at least the ones that I've worked with have been great, that they say, will I see your sick pet? Absolutely. If it's really sick, bring it in, I'll look at it. But then they usually follow that up with, I don't normally see them, but if you can't find somebody else, then I will see it so I can get you some help. It really does just take some digging, and most of the time you have to talk to groups like this and they'll know which veterinarians they've run across are the best.
One of those information sheets is a list of veterinarians that see tortoise, and it's by zip code.
Thank you.
They're not recommendations, it's just people who say that we know have some experience.
It is actually a very specialized group of veterinarians that get into it too. When you go to school, they teach you a very broad selection of animals. So I've gone over a lot of pigs, poultry, chickens, cows, sheep, dogs, cats. Those are the biggest ones that they've focused on. They do bring up birds and reptiles, tortoises occasionally, but they really aren't focused on. I'm going to get it's going to be tied in next semester with an emergency care class. They'll go over some exotics. Most people that do end up treating exotics later went to learn with someone for a while, or just have an interest in it and believe that people should have that care available, and so they find someone to learn from, and they get the textbooks and they read up on it to try and be as informed as they can. Okay?
If the shell is hard, how does it crack?
If you put enough pressure on it, it will. Just like our bones, if you put pressure on it in the right way with the right amount of weight, they can crack it. And dogs and cats have a lot of jaw power. You'd be very surprised how much jaw power they're able to get through bones, so they can certainly find an edge and break through it.
We have a Russian tortoise also that doesn't like our desert tortoises, so we have to separate them because he's very aggressive toward them. But is there any chance of cross-contamination of any parasites or anything between the two species?
Those two can share, yes, because they're both tortoise species. They can share parasites. Okay, if anyone thinks of any other questions, you can just come up to me. I'll hang around for a while, okay? Thank you.
Wasn't that fantastic? Let's give her another hand. Renee was gracious enough to take this on when I don't think she actually offered to do it. Wow, that was a lot of information.
I came home from spring break and they kind of just, hey, what are you doing this Saturday?
There was this cascade of people who were going to talk and couldn't, and then this was the bottom, unfortunately. And what a jewel, huh? What a wealth of information.
Thank you.
We'd love to give you a T-shirt if you'd like to have one. Would you
Oh, I'll
like
take one,
of these wonderful
absolutely.
T-shirts?
Yeah.
Well, good, we'll get you one back there. And now, I want to leave you with the thought that if you have a breeding pair, please separate that breeding pair. If you have a tortoise inside, please make a habitat for it outside. Put lots of plants in. And if you have questions, just ask us, and we'll be seeing you either on a field trip or in May. So have a wonderful season. Until then.